Boys and girls, welcome to the General Knowledge of the Bible Quiz. Today, we're going to learn about the Old Covenant. So, as I start, let me ask you one question. What does it mean by a covenant with God? Let's take a moment to pause and discuss this with your officers and your peers. Alright, what does it mean by a covenant with God? So a covenant is a relationship initiated by God to which a body of people or a group of people responds in faith. So what does it mean? It means that it's a relationship that God started with us, and how we respond back is in the words of faith. So what is then the meaning of the Old Covenant? So the Old Covenant is the one given by God to the Hebrews people. The Hebrews meaning that the chosen people of God. So with that, what comes and implies in this covenant? What does God promise the chosen people? So let's turn our Bible now. Let's take it out and flip the Bible to Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 9. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping His covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love Him and keep His commandments. So here we see that God started that covenant. He is faithful. Alright, so keeping His covenant of love to the thousands of generations of people that He has. Let's look at also another Bible verse. Let's turn our Bible to the book of Exodus, chapter 19, verse 5. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possessions, although the whole earth is mine. So here we can see it talks about the covenant again. So the previous verse talks about God's covenant towards the people. So He keeps His covenant towards the people. But in this verse, we see that we are to keep His covenant as well. So it's a both relationship that takes two ways that comes together. So what is God's promise to them? So God promised them that they would be His people, His chosen people. This is God's promise. That is God's covenant. So, where can all these promises or this covenant be seen in the Bible? Let's take a minute to talk about it with your officers and your peers. So the question is, where can this Old Covenant, the covenant of God, the Old Covenant be found in the Bible? It can be found in the Old Testament of the Bible. So if you read just now, Deuteronomy and Exodus are the books from the Old Testament that you can see in the Old Testament through the people that He has chosen, the Israelites, the Hebrews. That is where He gave His covenant. He keeps His covenant. He gave His promise to let them have good life, generations of prosperity, blessings, as long as they keep their love and command of God as well. So God shows their love through the covenant, and people respond in faith to God as well. So, among all this, covenant seems to be a bit metaphorical and a little big idea to grasp. But there's some way in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that shows very clearly on an example of an old covenant. Where do you think that is? Let's take a minute to talk about that with your officers and your peers. So where do you think it's a very evident display of the Old Covenant, an example of the Old Covenant? As some of you might have guessed it, it's in the Ten Commandments. So God's will is shown very clearly on what He wants us to do in the Ten Commandments. By doing that, He will allow us to have a good and productive life on earth, worshipping Him, keeping faith in Him, and has prosperous life. Prosperous not in financial, but in the different blessings that we have in life. So that's today's lesson about the Old Covenant. So I leave you this reflection questions as you discuss with your officers and your peers. Why do we need to know about the Old Covenant? And what does it mean to you that God has a covenant with you? And what are your favorite Bible stories which tells you about God's covenant or God's love in short? Alright, so that's the lesson for today. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next lesson.